My name is Erin Holloway, and I'm 31 years old. I used to believe I came from a close, loyal family, one where sacrifice was love and love was unconditional. But last Christmas, everything I believed crumbled the moment I found out my family planned a luxury vacation without me and used my money to help fund it. That was the day I stopped being their provider and started becoming something else. Someone who finally chose herself. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to pick between family loyalty and your own peace, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone. I grew up in a colonial house in Bedford, Massachusetts, where the trees lined the streets like they were guarding some long-forgotten secret. My mother, Elaine, was a beloved fifth-grade teacher at the local elementary school. My father, Robert, worked as an accountant for a downtown firm. We weren't wealthy, but we were secure, or at least that's what I told myself. I have two siblings. Caleb, my older brother by 5 years, and Lexi, my younger sister by 2. On paper, we looked like the perfect American family. Sunday dinners, vacations in Bar Harbor, endless birthday traditions. But our roles in that house had been set in stone before I was even old enough to realize it. Caleb, the oldest, was the golden child with wild ideas and bigger dreams. The one everyone believed in even when those dreams failed. Lexi was the baby, fragile and imaginative, always one heartbreak away from collapsing. And me? I was the stable one, the fixer, the one who kept the ship afloat. When Caleb shattered a neighbor's window playing baseball, I was the one who apologized and swept the glass. When Lexi forgot her field trip money or missed school deadlines, I was the one who handled it. It became who I was, dependable, steady, always available. And for a long time, I wore that like a badge of honor. But as we grew up, those childhood patterns didn't fade, they calcified. After college, I landed a job at a marketing agency and worked myself breathless into a director position. Meanwhile, Caleb bounced from scheme to scheme: a gourmet peanut butter business, a crypto startup, and most recently, a drone photography company that folded in under a year. Every failure ended the same way: my parents dipping into retirement funds to help him out. When that well ran dry, he turned to me, each time with glossy promises and a voice full of hope. I lent him $2,000, then $5,000, then $10,000, always with a handshake and "I swear I'll pay you back this time." He never did. Lexi had her own rhythm of collapse and reinvention. First art school, then culinary school, then cosmetology. All left halfway through. Each new dream came with a bill: tuition, rent, therapy copays, sometimes even utilities. And every time she spiraled, my parents spun her a net woven from my bank account. But when I was laid off for a month during the agency merger, nobody offered to cover my bills. The double standard never felt more obvious than in my late 20s. I'd given Caleb over $40,000 over the years, money I'd worked for. Lexi? I'd covered her rent 6 times, bought her a used car after she wrecked the one Dad gave her, and even helped her get a medical procedure she wasn't insured for. And still, I was expected to show up to every birthday, every cookout, every last-minute emergency, smiling and available. I kept telling myself this was love. This was what families did. Then came Daniel. I met him at a fundraising gala for a local children's charity. He was an IT consultant, level-headed, kind, fiercely protective. He picked up on the dynamic in my family within weeks. On our 3rd date, after I canceled dinner to help Lexi move out of an apartment she'd been bullied out of by her roommates, Daniel asked me something I never thought to ask myself. "Erin, do you realize they rely on you because you let them?" I remember brushing it off. "They're just going through stuff. I'd do anything for them." Would they do the same for you? That question stayed with me because I didn't know the answer. Daniel's family was different. His siblings were self-sufficient. His parents treated holidays like opportunities to celebrate, not to guilt trip. No one asked anyone for money. No one expected bailouts, but still, I held on to hope. Maybe Caleb would get it together. Maybe Lexi would land somewhere long enough to find her footing. Maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally say no and let them figure it out on their own. So when Daniel proposed 2 years into our relationship, I was overwhelmed with joy. I saw it as a turning point, a milestone I could finally celebrate with the family I'd supported for so long. I bought a bottle of vintage champagne. I wrapped gifts that maxed out my credit limit, a pro-level camera for Lexi, noise-canceling headphones for Caleb, and a top-of-the-line espresso machine for my parents to replace the broken one they never replaced themselves, despite Daniel's quiet warnings. I pictured the moment over and over in my head, my mom crying. With joy, my dad's proud handshake, Lexi shrieking, Caleb clapping me on the back. I convinced myself that this would be the Christmas we'd finally reset. That this one moment would remind them of who I was, not just the bank. Not just the helper, but someone worthy of celebration. And then, the signs began. 2 weeks before Christmas, my mom told me not to come early to help with the usual decorating and meal prep. Her voice had an odd pitch, too cheerful. We've got it covered this year, honey. Just come on Christmas Eve morning like the others. The others? It was the first crack in the wall. Then came Caleb's weird response when I asked if we should carpool. Nah, he said, too fast. Might do some last-minute shopping. Don't wait on me. Lexi was even more vague, talking in circles about maybe coming with a friend, maybe arriving later, maybe playing it by ear. It didn't sit right, but I shoved the feeling down. They were probably just trying to be independent, right? Giving me a break for once? Then, a week before Christmas, I showed up to my parents' house with a tin of homemade ginger cookies, a tradition. I had the day off and thought I'd surprise them. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my father closing the garage door in a hurry. Through the sliver before it shut, I saw multiple suitcases lined up. "Aaron, what a nice surprise," he said too brightly. "Your mother's out. Just missed her. What's with the luggage?" I asked casually. "Oh, old stuff. Donating." Church drive. Inside, the house was spotless. No half-wrapped presents. No flour on the counters. It didn't look like Christmas was coming. It looked like someone was leaving. A travel brochure poked out from under a better. Homes magazine on the coffee table, turquoise ocean, palm trees, white sand. I didn't say anything. As I left, I overheard my dad whisper into the phone, "Yeah. She just stopped by. No, I don't think she suspects." I wanted to believe he meant something else. Anything else, but I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. They were planning something without me. And not just something small. I brought it up to Daniel that night. "Do you think they're planning a trip without telling me?" He hesitated. "Honestly, yeah, I do. And if they are, you need to decide what you're going to do." I tried to laugh it off. I wanted to believe he was wrong. But then came Christmas Eve, and everything I feared became real. Christmas Eve morning, Daniel and I loaded up the car with gifts, a bottle of champagne, and the unshakable hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong, that the suitcases were really donations, that the travel brochure was an old magazine, that the strange tones and tight-lipped conversations were all in my head. The drive felt longer than usual. The closer we got to my parents' house, the more my stomach twisted. I told myself to focus on the positives, our engagement, the thoughtfulness of my gifts, the dream of finally being recognized for something more than what I gave. Their house looked exactly as it always had on Christmas Eve, lights glowing, the faded inflatable Santa still holding court in the front yard, and my mother's wreath with gold ribbon hanging on the front door. For a split second, I let myself believe everything was normal. My mother answered the door, wrapping me in a hug a little too fast, a little too tight. "Aaron, sweetheart, you look exhausted. Are you sleeping okay?" Daniel gave my dad a firm handshake, and my dad responded with forced cheer. "Glad you both made it. Come in, come in." Inside, the scene looked like something from a holiday movie. Cinnamon candles, a crackling fireplace, video on the TV, the tree trimmed to perfection, but it all felt staged. Caleb was already there, lounging on the couch and scrolling through his phone. Lexi sat cross-legged on the floor, oddly quiet, fiddling with the ribbon on a present she hadn't wrapped. "Hey," I greeted them, setting down the champagne. "How's everyone doing?" "Great," Caleb muttered, barely looking up. Lexi gave a distracted smile. "Nice coat." My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Gene arrived shortly after us, followed by my cousins Alina and Drew. As they walked in, I noticed the way Aunt Ruth's eyes scanned me quickly, then flicked away. She hugged me and whispered, "We've missed you at the last few gatherings." What? I'd been at every single one. My head tilted, but she was already moving on to Daniel. Dinner was the same roast and sweet potatoes we always had. But the conversation felt curated. Every time I asked about plans for the rest of the week, the topic changed. My questions were dodged, my comments redirected. No one mentioned New Year's, no one asked us about our engagement plans. And even Daniel noticed Dot. He leaned over mid-meal and whispered, "They're hiding something." I nodded without answering. My hands were sweating. The knot in my stomach now felt like a stone. After dessert, we got ready to leave for the traditional Christmas Eve service. Lexi said she forgot her phone in the kitchen and asked if I'd grab it. Of course, I said. Of course, because I always did what they asked. I found it on the counter next to the tray of sugar cookies. As I picked it up, the screen lit up with a notification. Group text, Bahamas crew. Final confirmation, flights at 10 a.m. 12:26, don't forget passports. Sunscreen packed, my hand froze. My heart stopped. Bahamas crew, I tapped into the heft. Thread, fingers trembling. There they all were: Caleb, Lexi, my parents, Aunt Ruth, Uncle Gene, Alina and Drew, all the people currently laughing in the living room. The messages stretched back months: flight bookings, resort plans, group activities. A message from my mother just a few weeks ago. Please remember, no mention to Erin. She's so overwhelmed with work lately, and we don't want her to feel left out. Caleb, she'd probably say no anyway, deadlines or whatever. Lexi, plus she'd bring Daniel, and this is supposed to be just family. Just family. That phrase punched me in the chest. I stood there, Lexi's phone heavy in my hand, blinking at the glowing screen like it had slapped me. My mouth went dry. I returned her phone without saying a word. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The service that night blurred into white noise. Daniel held my hand tightly the entire time. My thoughts were in the pews. They were echoing with that one text, just family. Back in my childhood home, I barely registered the stockings hanging from the mantel or the gifts piled beneath the tree. I watched my family chat, smile, and sip hot cocoa, and suddenly I saw it all with new eyes. None of them looked guilty. None of them seemed anxious. This was normal for them. Daniel, and I retreated to my old bedroom for the night. I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. I saw the text. I whispered. Daniel sat up instantly. I knew it. They're going to the Bahamas, I said, almost too softly to hear. They planned it for months. Everyone is going, except us. Do they know, you know? He asked. No, not yet. I stared out the window. Lexi saw me with her phone but didn't say anything. Daniel exhaled slowly. So what now? I don't know. Part of me wants to confront them right now, but I also want to enjoy Christmas morning. Announce the engagement. Have that one moment. He nodded. Then wait. But after that, don't let it go. I lay awake for hours, watching the shadows shift on the ceiling. I thought about every time they called me for help, every late-night transfer, every apology I accepted without hesitation. All while they were planning this behind my back. The resentment, like a low-burning fire, was now a full blaze. Christmas morning came crisp and quiet. The air smelled like cinnamon rolls and pine. I smiled for the photos, played my part, pretended. I didn't know presents were handed out. I watched Lexi unwrap the camera I spent 3 paychecks on. She barely looked at it before setting it aside. Thanks, she said, like I'd handed her a sweater from a bargain bin. Caleb grunted his thanks for the headphones. My parents are more enthusiastic about their espresso machine, but even then, I saw the flicker of something behind their eyes. Guilt maybe, or fear that I might know. When it was finally time, I stood up, heart racing. Everyone, I said. Daniel and I have something to share. He stood beside me and I held out my left hand. We're engaged. Gasps, light applause, a few hugs, but the enthusiasm? Barely above room temperature. Congratulations, sweetheart, my mom said, kissing my cheek. That's lovely. Yeah. Caleb muttered, raising his coffee mug. Nice. Lexi said nothing at all. No one asked for details. No one popped the champagne. And in that moment, I knew they were already mentally checked into a beachfront resort. They had no space left for me. When Lexi left her phone on the couch again later that morning, a final message popped up. Final reminder, airport meetup at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't forget sunscreen. And just like that, I snapped. I stared at the message on Lexi's phone, the words burning into my vision like a brand. Final reminder, airport meetup at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't forget sunscreen. My fingers hovered over the screen. I didn't mean to open the thread again, but I did, and what I saw confirmed everything I feared. Weeks of conversations. Discussions about which excursions to book, meal packages, snorkeling equipment, airport shuttle options. Everyone had contributed. Everyone had been involved. Everyone except me. One message from Aunt Ruth said, "It'll be nice to have a trip." With just us again, Erin's always so serious. She'd probably spend the whole time on Zoom calls. Caleb replied, not to mention her fiancé seems stiff. My mother chimed in, "Let's not be unkind. We just want a peaceful time together." And Erin's got too much on her plate. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just that they excluded me. It wasn't just that they lied. It was the way they justified it, turned me into the outsider, too serious, too busy, too much. And then had the audacity to spend the money I'd given them over the years to help fund their fantasy. I placed the phone back on the table when Lexi returned and saw me standing there. She froze. Her face drained of color as her eyes darted to her screen. "You read it," she whispered. I didn't answer. "Why were you going through my phone?" "You left it open," I replied, my voice low and trembling. "And I saw the messages." "I know everything." From the living room, I heard the chatter slow, like animals sensing a coming storm. We were going to tell you," Lexi stammered. "When? At the gate? On the beach? Or were you just going to wait until I saw your pictures on Instagram?" "Like a stranger?" My mother appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. "Erin, what's going on?" I turned to her, jaw tight. "I know about the trip." Silence dropped like a bomb. I saw the messages. The group texts, the planning, the flights, the had just family comments. My father stood behind her now, his face unreadable. Caleb stepped into the hallway. Aunt Ruth and Uncle Gene peeked. From the living room, their expressions uneasy. Daniel came to my side and placed a hand gently on my shoulder. I hadn't even realized how tightly I was shaking. My voice cracked. "You've all been planning this trip for months. A 10-day vacation to the Bahamas, and I was never even considered. Not only that you used my money. Caleb, when you said you needed $3,000 for equipment in September, was that for this trip?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. "Lexi, you needed help with rent in October. You said you were about to be evicted." She blinked rapidly. "I didn't need help, and you still had enough saved to book a tropical vacation?" Neither of them spoke. "And you?" I turned to my parents. "Asked me to cover a plumbing emergency last month. Was there even a leak?" My mother's face crumpled. "Erin, you didn't think I'd find out?" My voice cracked as I looked around the room at every person who had smiled at me during dinner, who had hugged me this morning, who had accepted my gifts. "You lied to me. All of you, and you excluded me. And then you celebrated Christmas with me like none of it happened." Caleb finally spoke, defensive. "You're overreacting. It's just a vacation." "It's not just a vacation," I said, my voice rising. "It's betrayal. It's years of me being there for all of you. Dropping everything to help, lending money, giving support, showing up. And this is how you repay me?" "We didn't want to make you feel bad," my father said, his tone hollow. "So you excluded me and pretended everything was fine?" Lexi crossed her arms. "You're making this into a huge deal." "It's one trip." "One trip that proves everything," I said. "That I am only useful when you need something. That I'm not real family unless you need a favor." "That's not fair," my mother whispered. "No," I said, eyes stinging. "What's not fair is that I spent over $800 on gifts for people who didn't even want me in the same time zone." The room was silent. Daniel's hand tightened gently around mine. "I think we should go." I nodded. "Yeah, I'm done." I started walking toward the door, barely noticing that no one moved to stop me. My mother finally spoke behind me. "Erin, please don't leave like this." "It's Christmas." I stopped at the door. Turned to face them one last time. Double quotes. "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "And you just gave me the clearest gift of all what you really think of me." And with that, Daniel and I walked out. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The silence in the car was deafening at first. Daniel drove, eyes forward, until I finally exhaled and the tears came hard and fast. "They used me," I said, wiping my face. "They really used me for years. He pulled over and put the car in park, turned toward me. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I sobbed. "I don't know anything anymore. I just know. I can't keep living like this." He wrapped his arms around me. "Then don't." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in our apartment while Daniel slept beside me. The weight of years, the years I'd sacrificed, the birthdays I'd funded, the tears I'd comforted that were never returned, pressed down like a stone. I was done. I didn't know what revenge would look like, but I knew I wasn't going back to being the person they could drain dry and smile about it later. The week after Christmas passed in a haze of tears, silence, and sleepless nights. I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I called in sick for the first time in years and barely left the apartment. The thought of facing client meetings or holiday emails made me physically ill. I was unraveling. Daniel took care of everything. He brewed tea, brought me takeout, held me without asking questions. He never once said, "I told you so." He just sat with me, quiet and steady. While I unraveled the years of denial. My phone vibrated constantly with messages I couldn't bear to read. I shoved it in a drawer and left it there. But the images found their way to me anyway. Instagram updates, Facebook albums. My family had left for the Bahamas as planned, matching luggage, beach photos, dinner by candlelight, group selfies with palm trees in the background and captions like "family time" and "much needed rest with my people." Not a single message from them said anything about what had happened. No apology. No explanation. Just radio silence. Followed by smiling pictures. I sat on the couch one night, scrolling through Lexi's story. She posted a slow-motion video of the waves, the caption reading, "Nothing like peace after a long year." My blood turned cold. "Peace," I whispered. Aloud, "You got peace after lying to me for months." Daniel came in from the kitchen. "Block them." I shook my head. "I need to see it. I need to understand what I meant to them or didn't." "Aaron." He sat down. "You already know. You saw the messages. You don't need more proof. But it still doesn't feel real." That night, I dreamed of packing their suitcases, myself smiling, while I folded their clothes and slid in the passports. While they laughed behind my back, on New Year's Eve, we skipped the party we'd planned to attend. I stayed in pajamas while Daniel made pasta. Around 9 p.m., I retrieved my phone from the drawer. It was bursting with messages. From my mother, "Aaron, please don't overreact. We love you. We never meant to hurt you. Call me when you've calmed down." From my father, "Your mother is distraught. This was supposed to be a family trip to reconnect. Don't ruin it over a misunderstanding." From Caleb, "Seriously, Aaron?" It was. "A vacation. Chill. I'll pay you back when I get back." From Lexi, "I'm sorry you found out that way. But honestly, you're being kind of dramatic. Not everything is about you." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Not a single genuine apology. Not one acknowledgement of what they had done, of the betrayal, of the lie. They were all still circling the same narrative, that I was the problem. That I was too emotional, too reactive. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and landed on the carpet with a dull thud. Daniel didn't flinch. He just walked over and picked it up, checked the screen, and placed it on the table beside. They still don't get it," I whispered. "They think I'm mad because I wasn't invited on vacation. Because they've never had to see you as anything other than useful." Daniel said gently. The words made me cry all over again. The next morning, I called a therapist. Her name was Dr. Myra Sandoval, and Daniel had found her online, someone who specialized in family systems and emotional trauma. I met her on a snowy Tuesday afternoon. I sat in her quiet office and told her everything. The Bahamas. The years of financial support. The way my family only called when they needed something. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said something that would change everything. "You've been cast in a role, Aaron, the giver, the fixer, the one who holds everything together. But that role doesn't serve you anymore. And the moment you step out of it, the entire system fights back. Because if you change, they all have to change too. And they don't want to." Her words hit like a hammer. Because they were true. Over the next few weeks, I poured out everything in therapy. The memories I'd buried. The resentment I hadn't even realized I'd carried. The time Caleb borrowed my car for 6 months and returned it with engine damage he never paid to fix. The time Lexi spilled wine on my favorite dress before a job interview and left it. Off the time my parents asked me to host Thanksgiving with no help because they had spent their holiday budget on a trip with friends. I started writing it all down. Dr. Sandoval called it evidence of the system. I called it proof that I wasn't crazy. By mid-January, I returned to work. I threw myself into campaign strategy and client briefs, but something had shifted. The version of me who had once said yes to everything was gone. One night I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and old bank statements. I totaled every dollar I'd ever given my family since I graduated college. $72,912. I blinked at the number for a long time. That was a down payment on a house. That was 4 international trips. That was debt I still carried on my credit card debt, created in service of people who didn't even invite me on vacation. I closed the spreadsheet. I opened a new one. I titled it, My Life Budget. It had 2 columns, what I give and what I get. Under what I give, time, money, emotional labor, silence. Availability. Under what I get, guilt, obligation, manipulation, dismissal. I stared at the imbalance and felt the strangest thing, relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't mean. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally seeing the truth. Later that week, my family came home, and the real backlash began. They got back from the Bahamas in the second week of January. The photos stopped, but the messages didn't. My mother called the day they landed. I let it go to voicemail. Aaron, we're home. Please call us. This silent treatment is childish. We need to talk about what happened. Not what they did, what happened. A few days later, Caleb texted me. Hey, I need a favor. Rent's due and things are tight after the trip. Can you spot me $600? I'll get it back to you next month. Promise. I stared at the message. I hadn't spoken to him since Christmas morning. He had looked me in the eye, toasted our engagement. With a mug of coffee, all while knowing he'd used me and excluded me. And now he was asking for more. I typed a single word. No. He replied instantly. What do you mean no? I need it tomorrow or I get late fees. Not my problem. Figure it out. What followed was a stream of guilt-ridden texts, accusations, emotional leverage. How can you leave your own brother hanging? You know, I'm trying to get my business off the ground. I'll be homeless if you don't help. What kind of sister does that? I turned off my phone. That night, I told Daniel what had happened. He didn't cheer or celebrate. He just poured me a glass of wine, raised it gently, and said, to setting boundaries. I clinked my glass against his. I hadn't realized how heavy it was carrying everyone else for so long. One small no felt like a mountain being lifted. The next morning, my parents called. I ignored the first one. They called again at lunchtime. Finally, I answered. Aaron, my father said immediately, we heard from your brother. He says you're refusing to help him. That's correct. Your mother and I are very concerned. Caleb's in a difficult situation. I'm aware. My mother's voice chimed in from the background. Honey, we know you're upset, but family helps family. I almost laughed, like how family invites each other on trips. Like how family doesn't. Why? That's not fair, my mother said quickly. We've always been there for you. When? I asked. When exactly have you been there for me the way I've been there for all of you? The silence on the other end was long and telling. I've been thinking, I continued. Thinking about the past, about how things work in our family. And I've realized something, it doesn't work for me anymore. What does that mean? My father asked. It means I'm done being the family ATM. It means I'm taking a step back. I need to figure out what kind of relationship I actually want with all of you and whether it's possible at all. Aaron, my mother's voice cracked. Don't do this. We're family. I know, I said quietly. That's why this hurts so much. An hour later, Lexi called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask about the engagement or my life. She just said, Caleb told me what you said to Mom and Dad. How can you abandon us like this? I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied. I'm just no longer letting myself be used. You're overreacting. You've always been so dramatic when you feel left out. I wasn't left out, I corrected. I was excluded. On purpose, and I was lied to for months while funding the trip you all enjoyed. That's different, she snapped. I did need help with rent. But I also, I wanted to go on the trip too, but I didn't think you'd understand. You didn't think I deserved to be told the truth. Silence, you're being cold, she finally said. This isn't like you. Maybe not, I said. But maybe the old version of me, the one who gave endlessly and asked for nothing, that version doesn't exist anymore. As January dragged on, the pressure only increased. Aunt Ruth called to talk some sense into me. She said I was tearing the family apart. Uncle Gene sent a message reminding me that family forgives. But the only voice that truly mattered came from someone unexpected, my cousin Madison. She called one night after work. I just want you to know, I get it. They did the same thing to me 2 years ago. What? I blinked. The family ski trip. They planned it for months and never told me. I only found out because Drew posted a picture. And then when I brought it up, everyone said I was too sensitive. She sighed. I didn't say anything, I just forgave them. But nothing changed. They did it again this year with the Bahamas. Her words hit me like a freight train. This wasn't new. This was a pattern. I wasn't the first. I just happened to be the first to push back. What did you do? I asked. She hesitated. Nothing. I let it go. And I've regretted it ever since. That's why I'm proud of you, Erin. You're doing what I was too scared to do. Her voice was the first kindness I'd received from a family member in weeks, and it reminded me I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was drawing a line where one should have been drawn a long time ago. Dr. Sandoval helped me map the pattern. Your family built an emotional economy, she explained. One where you were the currency, your time, your money, your willingness to help. And when you stopped giving, the whole system panicked. But they act like I'm being selfish, I said. Because you are finally, and that's not a bad thing. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for putting myself first. I felt free, but my family wasn't done yet, and the pressure. They were about to put on me guilt, religion, legacy. Shame would be their final play, and they had no idea how ready I was for it. They tried everything next. When the begging and guilt didn't work, they moved on to the next strategy. Shame. It started with a phone call from Pastor Glenn. He was the longtime leader of the church I grew up in, the man who baptized me, who gave the sermon at my high school graduation, who once called me a rock of service in this congregation. Now he was calling on behalf of my parents. Erin, he said gently, your mother asked me to reach out. She's very distressed about the distance between you and the family. She's worried you're isolating yourself. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Pastor Glenn, with all due respect, I don't think this is a conversation for you to be part of. I understand that, but sometimes it helps to hear things from someone neutral. Your family is hurting. They're hurting because I stopped giving them money. Because I stopped playing my role. He paused. That may be part of it, but they feel blindsided. Blindsided? I nearly laughed. They excluded me from a family vacation, lied to me about it, used money I gave them in good faith, and I blindsided them. There was a long pause. Erin, I think you know family isn't perfect, but grace is what holds us together. Grace is a two-way street, I said. And I've been handing it out my whole life without ever getting any back. His voice lowered. Are you sure this isn't pride talking? It felt like a punch to the chest. Pride. That old familiar dagger. Used on women the moment they stand up for themselves. I kept my tone calm. No, Pastor, this is survival talking. And I'm not interested in returning to a dynamic that destroys my peace. He sighed again. I'll let your mother know we spoke. I'm sure you will. I hung up. The next day, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from my mother. 6 pages long. It started with, you were always the responsible one. We never had to worry about you like we did with Caleb and Lexi. That line alone told me everything I needed to know. The letter went on to recount how hard they'd worked to raise us, how many sacrifices they made, how deeply I was disappointing them by abandoning my family. There was no apology, no ownership, just rewritten history. I folded the letter and dropped it in the trash. I didn't cry. That night in therapy, I read a few lines aloud to Dr. Sandoval. She nodded. They're not trying to reach you, Erin. They're trying to pull you back. How do I keep moving forward? I asked. Because I can feel it in my bones, they'll never admit they were wrong. They don't have to, she said. That's the freedom in all of this. They don't have to change for you to heal. You just have to stop expecting anything different. It was the most painful truth I'd ever swallowed. Over the next few weeks, I took small, deliberate steps. I blocked Lexi on Instagram. I muted Caleb's number. I told Daniel that I didn't want to see or talk about my family for a while, not until I could breathe without guilt. He didn't hesitate. Whatever you need, I'm here. Then came the final straw. My parents showed up. At my job, I was in the middle of a strategy meeting when my assistant knocked on the door and said, "There's a couple out front asking to speak to you. They said they're your parents." My blood turned to ice. I stepped out into the lobby and saw them standing there, my mother clutching her purse, my father with his arms crossed. "Aaron?" she said softly. "We just want to talk." "Not here," I said. "You can't come to my job. We've tried calling," my father said. "You haven't responded." I made my boundaries clear. "Then be mature enough to sit down and talk about." Then he snapped and there it was, the mask slipping. The demand underneath the performance. I squared my shoulders. "You're not welcome here, and if you show up again, I will call security." My mother gasped like I'd slapped her. My father's face flushed red. "You would really do that?" He growled. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "Because this is my life now. And you don't get to invade it just because you don't like the new rules." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Later that night, I cried in the shower, not because I regretted it, but because I never stood that tall in my life. Daniel made dinner. I sat in silence while he brought me a bowl of rice and vegetables. And I looked at him, really looked at him. "I don't think I'm ever going back," I said. "To them?" He asked, to who I was with them. He nodded slowly. "Good. But?" My family wasn't done. A week later, I received a formal envelope in the mail. Inside was an invitation. "You are cordially invited to a family reconciliation dinner. Sunday, 6 p.m., home of Charles and Meredith Carter." That was my parents. They sent a paper invitation. They actually sent me a formal dinner invite. To apologize for excluding me from a tropical vacation I paid for. I stared at it for a long time. The absurdity. The manipulation disguised as civility. The expectation that I'd show up to their table, let them control the narrative again, let them say the words they rehearsed. I folded the invitation. This time, I didn't throw it away. This time I had a different idea. I didn't RSVP to the invitation. I didn't need to. They expected me to show up. To come with a softened heart and tearful eyes, ready to hug and make peace so they could avoid the hard truth of what they'd done, but I wasn't walking into that house unless it was on my terms. Instead, I mailed something back, a short card, elegant, simple. "Thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I won't be attending. I no longer accept performances in place of accountability." I signed it and added a quote at the bottom, one I'd highlighted in therapy the week before. "Refusing to be mistreated is not unkindness. It's self-respect." Then I dropped it in the mailbox. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't care if it made them angry. That same day, I made an even bolder decision. I scheduled a meeting with my financial advisor, Grace. We sat across from each other in her quiet office, her desktop glowing with spreadsheets and timelines. "I want to restructure my will," I said calmly. "And I want to create a charitable trust," she blinked. "Okay, that's a big step. Can I ask what's changed?" I smiled. "Everything." Over the next 2 hours, I adjusted every document I once had my family listed on my retirement. Accounts, life insurance policies, emergency contacts. I redirected all beneficiaries to a combination of Daniel, charity organizations I cared about, and a scholarship fund I decided to create for women in underrepresented business programs. I removed Caleb. I removed Lexi. I removed my parents. No more access. No more legacy. When we finished, Grace nodded. "I hope this brings you peace. It brings me closure." That weekend, I sent out 3 certified letters. Each one included a typed copy of my revised will and a simple note at the bottom. 2. Be clear, this is not meant to punish. It's meant to reflect truth. I'm choosing peace over pretense. And I no longer owe anyone access to my life simply because they share my blood. The reaction was swift. Lexi sent 3 text messages within the hour. "You're seriously cutting us off? You're erasing us from your will like we're strangers? You're disgusting." I didn't reply. Caleb sent a voice message that started, With "You ungrateful little," I deleted it before he finished. My parents? Silence. No calls, no emails. No more invitations. Just silence. And honestly, it was beautiful. With that silence came a deep and unexpected stillness in my life. For the first time in years, I didn't have to brace myself for a phone call asking for a favor. I didn't have to worry about whether I was being manipulated or guilted or used. I didn't have to keep hoping they'd see me differently. I simply let go. And when I did, something shifted. Daniel noticed it first. "You're sleeping better," he said one morning, brushing hair from my face. I hadn't realized it, but he was right. I wasn't waking up at 3 a.m. with my jaw clenched. I wasn't scrolling through my phone waiting for the next guilt trip. I wasn't rehearsing imaginary conversations with people who'd never hear me anyway. I was breathing. I was rebuilding. I started journaling again. Not just the pain, but the possibilities. What did I want to do now that I wasn't tethered to obligation? Where could my energy go now that I wasn't carrying everyone else's weight? One afternoon, I sat at a cafe downtown with Madison, my cousin, the only one who understood. "I want to do something bold," I told her. "Something that turns this pain into purpose," she smiled. "Then do it," I took her hand. "I'm creating a grant for women like us givers, ones who've been silenced in families and workplaces, who want to start over but don't have the resources." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "That's beautiful. It's necessary." And I meant it. The following month, I launched the grant fund. I called it the First No Fund, named after the first time I said no and meant it. Applications poured in. Stories from women across the country, teachers, nurses, daughters who had been drained dry by families and systems that called it love. While taking everything they had, I read every application. I cried through most of them, and I picked 5 women to receive the first round of funding. One of them wrote, "I've spent 20 years putting everyone else first. This is the first thing I've done just for me. Thank you for seeing me." It was the most healing sentence I'd ever read. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was reclaiming it, and still, the silence from my family remained until it didn't. One night, just after 10 p.m., I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring, then another call. Same number. Then a voicemail. I listened. "Aaron, it's Mom. Caleb's in trouble. Legal trouble. It's bad. We need help. Please call me back. You're the only one who can fix this." I stared at my phone. Not a single word about the grant, not a word about the changes, not even acknowledgement of what had passed between us. Just a plea for help. Once again, they were only reaching out because they needed something. But I wasn't that woman anymore. And this time, they were about to learn just how far I'd come. I didn't call her back. I didn't text. I sat with that voicemail for a full hour, listening to it 3 times until my chest stopped shaking. "Please call me back. You're the only one who can fix this." There it was again, the sentence that had defined my entire life. Fix this. Every birthday forgotten, every bill unpaid, every family secret covered in layers of silence and shame. It was always me they expected to fix it. Patch it. Pay for it. Smile through it. I'd been there. Family's duct tape. Their damage control girl, but I wasn't anymore. I pressed delete. The next morning, I wrote one final message, not to my mother, not to my father, not to Caleb or Lexi, but to myself. You are not responsible for their brokenness. You don't owe anyone your peace. And you will not betray yourself again just to be tolerated by people who never celebrated you. I printed it and taped it to my bathroom mirror. Then I called my lawyer and finalized the paperwork for the First No Foundation to receive a permanent portion of my assets. It would live on long after me, a living, breathing protest against the way I had been raised. Daniel brought home flowers that night, not roses, not anything fancy. Wildflowers. I stared at them, confused. "You said once," he reminded me, "you always wanted to run away and open a wildflower shop in Vermont. Remember?" I laughed through tears. I was 9. "But it was the first time you said out loud that you wanted something just for yourself." I kissed him. "I think I'm finally learning how." A week later, I received a letter from my father. Typed 2 pages. He didn't apologize. Not really. He said he was disappointed in how things turned out, that he wished I'd been more reasonable, that family should come before. Pride, but there was one sentence near the bottom that caught me. We just didn't think you'd really walk away. That's when I realized they never believed. I had the courage to choose myself. Not really. They thought I'd come back like I always did, with my wallet open and my arms wide. They trained me to believe love was earned through sacrifice. And I believed it for years, but not anymore, not now. I wrote back one sentence. You didn't lose me because I changed. You lost me because I finally saw you clearly. I never heard from him again. Years have passed now. The holidays look different. Quieter, smaller, but filled with people who actually show up, friends who bring joy, not debt, found family, chosen family. Daniel and I married last fall. Number 1 from my blood family was invited. There were no awkward speeches, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive toast, just laughter. Just love. I danced in a dress I bought with my own money, surrounded by people who knew the truth and stood beside me anyway. I've spoken at women's retreats, at business conferences, at high schools. I tell them the truth, that love without respect isn't love, that giving isn't holy when it erases you, that sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is say no and mean it. Sometimes the real healing begins when you stop waiting for an apology and give one to yourself. So here it is, the final thing I'll say about the family that raised me. I still hope they find healing, but I no longer believe I'm the one meant to give it to them. I've got gardens to grow, grants to fund, wildflowers to plant. In peace, finally to protect, because I am no longer theirs. I mind. If this story made you feel something or reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more true, soul deep stories like this one.